Thank you. Good afternoon. As just been introduced, my name's Joanne Einan. I work in the Mine Water Heat licensing team at the Coal Authority, and I'm going to introduce today where we've got to in terms of developing the processes for permissions and how we can help to facilitate the growth of mine water heat schemes. So just as an introduction, what I'm going to discuss is what are the different permissions that you can have to enter Coal Authority property in order to facilitate a scheme, to summarise the technical requirements of an application, and also to outline the stages in the process of entering into a mine water heat access agreement. And I wanted to do this because there's a number of people in the room who are at different stages of developing or operating schemes. And it's just to try and bring together sort of a common understanding of what it is that the Coal Authority is looking for, and actually how then we can facilitate the process to be as smooth and efficient as possible. So in terms of the different types of permissions, so the Coal Authority is the owner for the majority of the remaining in situ coal and also the coal mines. We also have property interests at surface. So a mine water heat scheme generally is going to obviously require access to mine workings. So for that, initially, the process I'm going to talk about is predominantly about running the scheme through boreholes. So initially, a permit to drill can be granted for the drilling of the boreholes. In terms of then starting to develop a scheme and starting to do pump testing, moving towards sort of the point where the scheme can be operational, an access agreement is then required that can actually provide a longer term permission and to enable the scheme to operate that is potentially moving the water around and changing the system underground. Where access might be required at surface, that might be through Coal Authority property, in the same way as any land ownership at surface, property agreements can also be entered into, but that's not necessarily a key part of a mine water heat scheme if there's no Coal Authority surface interests. So what is a mine water heat access agreement? So fundamentally, it is a legal agreement. It's between the Coal Authority and the operator, and it is required alongside permissions from the environmental regulator. So in terms of the Coal Authority, it's in obviously, so we cover Great Britain, so England, Scotland and Wales, and we have different regulators across those countries. So we have the Environment Agency, SEPA and NRW. And the Coal Authority permission is always required alongside whatever requirement it is from the environmental regulator. And I would recommend anybody that's looking at a scheme is actually contacting both the Coal Authority and the regulator to be clear about what it is the requirements are as early on in the process as possible to help sort of to make that efficient and smooth. So a mine water heat access agreement would generally be applied for after the drilling of boreholes. That doesn't mean they have to be applied for then. If an operator wants to apply earlier on in the process to potentially help to expedite their process, that is something that can be done, and the access agreement can incorporate different elements to cover the fact that the permits and the boreholes weren't drilled first, so that the permit would still be required. So once boreholes begin to be drilled, it is potential, as we've heard in previous presentations, that you might not actually hit the workings. You might not find the workings. You might not be able to hit the roadway that you've intended to hit. And it may be that actually your scheme in that location might not move forwards. And that's fundamentally why we're not asking for an access agreement prior to knowing whether you've been able to connect with your intended workings. However, if an operator wishes to do that, that is something that they can do. So the access agreement itself comes into two phases predominantly. You've got the exploratory phase where your testing work is done. And this is an initial term to enable system testing, to develop a greater understanding of the system based on sort of actual sort of test pumping as opposed to a theoretical desk-based study. And during this phase, there's the opportunity then to apply for a longer-term access agreement if it's considered that your scheme is a viable scheme that you wish to then take forward. And during that, then you can move that access agreement to the next phase, which is when it is operational and the scheme can be running for, we're looking at a scheme potentially up to 20 years, where we would have ongoing monitoring and controls that are agreed between ourselves and the operator that are just making sure that the scheme is working in the most sort of safe way to protect the public. So in terms of the stages of the permissions, there's a picture there that is of the poster that, for those of you who are in the room, is available in the poster session upstairs. And that's a joint poster that we've developed with the Environment Agency, where we're looking at the process that we have developed for England. The 5 stages there relate to the different permissions as well. So pre-construction of boreholes would be when you'd be applying for your permission, a permit to drill. The construction of boreholes is under the permit to drill. Testing the system is under an exploratory phase or testing phase agreement. Pre-operational phase is when you'd be actually making your application, and then operational is when you have actually moved the agreement through to the operational phase. So in terms of the technical requirements, so fundamentally what we're looking for is to understand the fact that we look the purpose of protecting public safety and property. And what the Coal Authority is looking for is an understanding from an operator that is known the risks around working within the system that the scheme is going to operate in. The core parts of this are assessing the risks in relation to the 4 points up there. So what I would be looking for is baseline data. Baseline data is always important to be able to understand what an impact is. So if we're looking at the mine gases and we're looking at the risk of mine gas migration, to understand as much as possible what the current situation is before boreholes are drilled or before water starts to be pumped is a really core safety the thing that we're looking into. Water chemistry, where's the water moving around? Are we looking at mixing mine water? Is the water going to have a potential impact on any aquifers? My scheme's gone because I'm not too... And we've got that at this point where you'd be certainly wanting to make sure that your regulator permissions are in place or that you're complying with the regulator permissions. In terms of water migration, looking at that, this is how the water levels effectively are altering or as water is moved around. A key part of this is hydrogeological conceptual modelling, and there's a slide on that that's going to come in a minute. This, again, is a key thing. So if we've got changes of water levels, we don't want to be increasing the risk of gas migration if water levels drop. And ultimately, as well, we don't want water levels to be rising to the point where we're seeing water at surface. So this is the kind of thing that we're actually looking for. So the understanding of the system will develop as the scheme progresses. So initially, I know the slide is... So initially, at the start of the process, before you've drilled your boreholes, most of your information will be from desk-based information. As you've drilled your boreholes, as you've started to understand the concept, etc., you will have more of an understanding of the connections within the workings. So as the scheme progresses, it's increasingly based on information from system testing. I've got a link at the end of the presentation as to where you can access that, and we can send this out to you along with the supporting guidelines. And this is very much a process for England. It's a joint process with the Environment Agency. It's showing you the interconnections between the different permissions. So the lines in green are the work that is done with the Environment Agency, and the blue is the work that's done with the Coal Authority. We have, where possible, aligned the timelines and aligned the different submissions. So in terms of the application details and technical assurance, so what we're looking at the moment is finalising some application forms. This is something that is really important to us at the moment, to be able to provide that sort of better guidance in terms of what it is that we're looking for. So these are in the final stages now of being reviewed to be able to be made available for applicants to moving forwards. So in terms of the general application form, again, we're looking that we can develop this as a digital form, which would be largely around applicant details of the scheme, contact details, for example, who the principal contractors are. That's a level of information. This will be supported at the different stages by more technical information. such as a borehole table form that will take you through all of the bits of information that we require in terms of the depth of borehole, the seam that it is connected with, for example. The application then needs to also be supported with test pumping information, and this is where we would anticipate the hydrogeological conceptual model being included. And this is something that, again, I've put one of the pictures on there, which is, I need to give credit to Lee Wyatt for this. This has come from his poster that he's got upstairs, where we're looking at connections within the mine working. So what the conceptual model is, it's predominantly a schematic. It doesn't have to be presented exactly like this, but it's this kind of information that we're looking for. So what are the mine entries? What are the water features? So this is just the system without any scheme in there. So the lines relate to shafts rather than boreholes, the vertical lines. We're looking at the different coal seams. We're looking at the different connections between the two, because if water's being moved around underground, we want to know where that water is moving, and if it's going back, is it non-consumptive? Is it going back to where it's supposed to be going? Because these are the things that reduce the risk of the scheme. And we would also be looking within this for monitoring. So if we're looking at, are the water levels changing? Are they dropping? This isn't necessarily this isn't going to be coming from the boreholes for which you extract and re-inject to. It needs to come from somewhere within the system so that we can understand that. So just in summary, so what we're looking at is the application process and our requirements being about protecting public safety and property. Key points are to understand the mine workings, understand the risks, and establish appropriate monitoring, mitigation, and controls. And I've just put there the contact details. I know that if you just put Mine Water Heat Access Agreement into a search engine, there's a new web page or a new new page on gov.uk that was launched last week, where over time you're going to see more information on there. That will also give you the link to the Mine Water Heat licensing at coal.gov.uk email address, where we can send you a copy of the current version of the timeline and supporting notes. And I'd always encourage you, if you're looking at developing a scheme, to contact ourselves or the regulators and the regulator as well, to make sure that you've got access to the most up-to-date information. Thank you for listening.